Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth talk in Music Network's professional development course for musicians taking charge of your performance career performing online. My name's Sarah Ledridge, and I'm delighted to welcome David Taylor today to present on the subject of choosing your platform. A leading entrepreneur in the world of classical music, David Taylor has built his career on a dynamic approach to bringing innovation to the arts, leading him to be named on Forbes' 30 Under 30 Europe 2018 list. Since creating Yorkshire Young Sinfonia, it has reached an audience of over 7.5 million people in just 4 years. David is passionate about enabling the next generation of entrepreneurs in classical music. Just to say, you'll all receive a PDF via email in the next couple of days, which will summarize David's key points and contain links to any websites he might refer to. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available to view on the Music Network YouTube channel from January. We'd love to hear from you, and David will have time to answer questions at the end. So please do type any questions you have into the Q&A box. If you're having any technical difficulties, let me know via the chat box and I'll try to help. So I'd like to hand over now to David Taylor.
Hi there, it is great to have you joining us today, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the introduction, Sarah. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today about choosing your platform, and it's going to be quite a varied topic to go through. There's so many potential options and also lots that we can do to work out where is best for you online as well. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about me, there's a website and social media that's there in case you want it later on. But for today's session, we're going to look at a general initial overview of what choosing your platform is, looking at websites and what you need in a website and why everyone should have one, social media and what each different platform is like, the pros and cons of each, what content resonates best on each platform, and also, again, where's best for you. And then we're going to be looking at streaming quite a lot as well, as I know it's something that a lot of us are using, whether we know it or not, whether it's direct to live streaming on Facebook or we're using Zoom for teaching. It's something that's a huge part of what we're doing now during this pandemic as musicians. And then at the very end, we're going to look at other platforms for your creations. What can you do with MP3s, digital downloads? Where's the best place for those sorts of things? And then finally, ending with a Q&A. And as Sarah mentioned, if you've got any questions, please do put them in the chat and we'll get to them in the very end as well, which I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And for me, I always love Q&As, so please do feel to ask away. Brilliant. So to start off with, I'm very keen on making sure that everything around choosing your platform is what's best for you. So for example, I was recently in touch with a musician who was wanting help in creating a YouTube profile. And they were very keen on having this whole presence and very driven towards YouTube and video content, all these different things. But from going through a small sort of skills and interests audit, it turns out that they not only didn't like creating videos, they hated speaking on camera, they didn't know how to video edit, all these different things. But they had a huge passion for writing. So we moved them away from creating a YouTube channel and towards a blog. So these are some questions that I think might be of interest for you to reflect on. And from here, we can work out where's best for you to get started. So how comfortable are you at writing? How comfortable are you at talking, or with it just being audio? How comfortable are you at talking to camera, which is a very different skill? How comfortable are you at taking photos, either of things, but also of yourself? And they're two different things as well. How comfortable are you at editing videos? And also, how comfortable are you at editing audio? As a musician, I think it's very easy for us to be incredibly critical of our own audio. So throughout this talk, I'd really encourage you to have a look at these questions and think, potentially give yourself a little mini quiz going through. If you're wanting to copy and paste these, you're also very welcome to do so. If you go to david-taylor.org/mnquiz, the Music Network quiz, that you don't have to input any details. There's not anything to actually do a physical quiz. The text is just there for you to copy and paste if that's helpful during this presentation. Brilliant. So first off, regardless of what platform you're wanting in your various different skills, we all at some point need a website. And why this is important is that in essence, it is your shop front. This is where people come to find you on the internet, but also will come to find out more about you for when you're going back to return to live things as well. There's so much you can do to make sure a website is something that really works for you. So the must-haves for everyone as a website are a homepage, which is something that has something short and snappy about you, ideally quotes about yourself, and almost like a highlight reel of the rest of the website. then a biography about yourself. And what I really advise doing as well is having a downloadable press kit on here, which is a link to not only your biography of different lengths, but also images that people can use. One, this is great if people are wanting to come and find you for various content and things and use your information in advance. But also I find it really helpful for if you are contacted saying, please can you send us a biography or these different things, and you personally are in a rush, you can just direct them straight to your website and it's one less thing for you to worry about. And then a gallery of images of yourself, any audio that people can listen to, whether that's embedded or links to streaming services or CDs that you've released, videos of yourself playing, contact information, whether that's a form or email address or telephone numbers, social media links for directing people to where they can find you on the internet and also find your voice and how they can interact with you, which is really important. And then any additional extra resources, so things like merchandise, recordings you can sell, extra content, arrangements, books that you've created. There's so much we can get onto later as to additional things that your website can do for you, which is really important. And regardless of where you are in your career stage or what type of genre you're in, a website is incredibly vital as it being a central place and a hub for you as a musician that can signpost the rest of your output, but also where people can come and find information about you as well. So that is a very quick fly through websites, which then takes us on to where can you build a website? I think we live in a most amazing age where you don't necessarily need any expertise or skills to a high level anymore for something that is should be a very technological thing. Now there's some amazing website builders where with little skills and expertise in this field of technology, you can actually go away and create incredible looking professional websites yourself. So the two that I always recommend are Squarespace and Wix. My personal preference is Squarespace, but I definitely encourage you looking at both. If it's the first time of you building a website, Wix can potentially be a bit easier. It's a bit like Microsoft Publisher where you can drag and drop things around your website. Whereas Squarespace is all about blocks and you can rearrange things and they reshape depending on who's looking at your website, if it's on a phone or a desktop. But those two I'd really recommend. Although you can go and get website builders, they're usually very expensive and it's a longer process. Whereas these two I have huge experience in recommending to people and using them myself, and they've always been incredible. So moving on, we are looking at social media. And in general, we're going to go through 4 different social media platforms as the main ones to look at, which are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. There is also argument for looking at Twitch and TikTok in relation to music, but we're going to overlook those with Twitch because there's currently not much of a music streaming audience on there at the moment, although I think there's certainly great potential on there. And also TikTok, as particularly for classical music, there's still quite an emerging genre there, but also it's not quite as established within our specific field. With both of those, I definitely have the caveat that I really recommend potentially investigating them as a field where you can really explore something in new and uncharted territory for our sector. But what we're going to do now is do a quick run through the different 4 social media platforms and see which might be interesting for you to fit into with your voice. So first off, Facebook. Facebook is the largest social media platform. It has 2.4 billion users per week globally. What's really fascinating for me in this slide is looking at the age demographic, and you'll see that 46% of 65-year-olds and above globally are on Facebook, which I think is a much larger figure than you would probably normally give credit for, and it's one that surprised me. And also the 50 to 64 age range as well, and 79-year-olds. Sorry, 70% of the 30 to 49-year-olds. And just to go back to what Sarah said, all of these graphs and things will be available in the PDF that comes to you afterwards as well. So with Facebook itself, it's a mixture of text, images, and videos. And one of the huge benefits of Facebook is its advertising, and Facebook adverts are cheap and simple to use. The minimum spend that you can spend on Facebook, so the smallest amount it will let you spend is £1 per day in the UK and €1 per day in Ireland and the rest of the EU. So realistically, it can be a very low risk way of advertising. And it isn't that you send an advert out to the world. You can target people depending on if they like certain pages, if they play the violin, if they are in your town or city. So you can be very specific about who you reach. It's actually quite a simple procedure to use as well. And you can also cancel things as they're in progress if they're not working as you wish. I've put the caveat that only good adverts work as well. As with Facebook adverts, it's quite tempting to just hit this boost button on your post or advertise button. and to promote anything regardless of how good that content is. So it still comes back to this thing as if you're creating an advert that isn't good, it's not necessarily going to resonate. And that's potentially another conversation in itself. But if you find that you're creating content that's good and of value and you think is of interest to people, it's potentially worth exploring the world of Facebook adverts. One thing we're quite guilty of in the music world is using our Facebook profiles instead of pages for advertising. So this is a profile is where you can add someone as a friend, whereas a page is where you like a page. The difference are that main reasons for not using a profile is that it actually breaks Facebook's terms and conditions if you're using your profile for business purposes, which if it's self-promotion for yourself as a musician, technically is. A profile also is limited to 5,000 friends. So ideally we want at some point to go beyond that and have an unlimited potential of people. So at some point you would lose that and you have to then convert to a page anyway. And also a page is what is external facing. People don't have to add you as a friend to see what your content is. It's very much an outward facing shopfront, and it also comes up on Google searches significantly more as well. And you can link them to websites significantly easier. There are lots of additional features with Facebook as well that have huge benefits, such as events, groups, the live streaming features which we're going to soon. And those things are really good at building community. So say, for example, if you're wanting to build a small education project, you can have events there and groups of discussion built around it, and it's all facilitated for you in advance. So there's some really powerful tools there with Facebook. Moving on to YouTube. So YouTube has 2 billion users globally. As you can see from the age range, it's predominantly a younger age demographic. There's also the YouTube Kids app, which does remove advertising and is then available to young people who are aged under the age of 12. Which is a unique feature for social media, as most other platforms require people to be 12-year-olds and up. So if you're creating educational content for people who are have young children, who are ages 3 and 4, who may have given them access to YouTube Kids app, this would be really great for them. It's heavily focused on video, as you may expect. One thing you may not realize is a sort of a workaround is that you can upload audio with a picture as a video file and use that as a way of displaying your music. So say, for example, if you create a video which is your performance of a piece, but you upload either a photo of yourself or something that's cinematic or a nice landscape of just a still image, you can have that there as a video as well. One thing that also always blows me away is that YouTube is the second largest search engine. So if you're creating educational content, you can create your content around what people may be searching for. So practice tips, how to improve my embouchure. There's lots of different things if you start to create your content around it being something that is searchable and discoverable, that is a huge benefit on YouTube. There's also the element of community building as well, with people subscribing to your content, the comment section, the way you can interact with your fans. There's a huge element there to YouTube as well. There is now also the YouTube memberships feature, where people can pay to see additional content or pay to support you through the platform. The big caveat of that is that you do need 30,000 subscribers to have people support you through YouTube directly. So for most of us who are starting out at the beginning of the journey, or even those of us who are quite a way through our journey, this may not be something that is suitable for us just yet. But there's some good workarounds for creating your own subscriber program that we'll talk about later as well. Then moving on to Instagram. Instagram has 1 billion users globally. As you can see from the age range, it's a predominantly younger age demographic, but also not as young as you think, with 47% of 30 to 49-year-olds also on Instagram and 23% of 50 to 64-year-olds, which is also a figure that I was quite surprised by. As you may have guessed, if you've used Instagram before, it's highly focused on the images. Videos are also important and work very well on Instagram, particularly through the Instagram TV feature, but also within native posts themselves. One thing that you may not expect is that long text captions also work well. So say, for example, if you want to write a short form blog and put that into the caption of a post, they are things that also resonate well on the platform, so it doesn't have to be just something that's image focused. One thing that we're not going to touch on in huge depth in this talk is the algorithms for each platform, as that's quite a complex beast. But Instagram's algorithm does reward you for using all of the different features within Instagram. So it will show your post to people more if you use all of its different features. So that will be posts, Instagram stories, Instagram TV, and now its new feature, Instagram Reels. So if you're able to put out content in all those full formats within Instagram, it will then reward you and help your profile grow more. Also, you have the ability to sync to an online shop within Instagram and display products through Instagram, which is quite a unique feature. And that isn't just that you're, say, for example, selling shoes or something that you wouldn't normally think. This can be your album, digital downloads, your teaching services, anything that can be a product in an online shop, which is where your imagination can technically run wild. So you can use it for e-commerce as well. And then moving on to Twitter. I'm always surprised at how small Twitter is compared to the other platforms, but when you think of how much it's in our news cycle, but it's still a huge audience that has some huge potential gains as well. So it has 386 million users, and you can see from the age demographic, it's kind of skewed towards the younger age, but also predominantly there's some good interaction and engagement from adults as well. With Twitter, as you may expect, it's heavily focused on text and conversations. And I think conversations is really the fascinating one where you can have huge rewards for Twitter. Images and videos do also work well as signposting and sharing of links. So if you're either sharing articles that are relevant to your field or what you're wanting to discuss, or even showing your own articles from your own website is a great way to do that. It's also really good for collaboration and showing an audience. So the ability to tag other people in as well is really useful. A lot of organizations use it for event posting, and that's when it's really important to have a profile where you can be tagged, where audience members then can come and find your profile and then find your website and your other platforms as well. So hopefully this is an overview has given you an idea of what each different experience is like on a platform and where you may feel most comfortable. So if you're heavily focused on writing, Twitter may be a really good platform for you. But likewise, if you're much more confident in creating short form video, Instagram's a much better platform. So that I think what I normally recommend is that you go for where you feel most comfortable in what you're doing, not necessarily where you want a following or where you think you should be. So some tips for finding your platform on social media. Start with what you love and only one platform at first. So that goes back to what I was just saying, that if you're really, really focused on creating long form videos and you're really passionate about that, start with YouTube and do everything on YouTube and don't worry about everything else. Once you start to use a platform more regularly and you've written some good focus, then have a presence on all of them. So likewise for being discoverable on search engines, being able to be tagged by other people you collaborate with, whether that's bookers, venues, ensembles, people wanting to find you, it's really important to have a presence that can either signpost you to somewhere. And whether that is just that you have somewhere in your biography on Twitter, that your Instagram profile is here and you use Instagram a lot more, then that's really worthwhile doing because they continue that discovery journey of going down the rabbit hole and finding more about you. Once you feel more comfortable of having a platform on one that you're focused on and then that you've got presence on all, then I'd really recommend as an ultimate goal to focus on two. Post regularly on them, as it one helps the algorithm for help on all platforms for showing you to more people, but also it helps build those connections with people, which is what we're really wanting to do further down the line, is not just getting views and sharing and those bits, but actually building deep and meaningful connections at scale. One thing I always go back to as well is being realistic and not idealistic. As much as I will say that posting regularly and with a schedule is really important, and it will certainly make your profiles grow, and being on more platforms than one is going to be beneficial. It's sometimes not realistic. So do what works for you and isn't going to be overwhelming. Have a realistic way of or approach and goals as to how you think you can connect people on social media, how much work you want to put into it, how much time you have, and the resources, etc. So if it is that your goal isn't that you post every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but is that at some point you will post 2-3 times a week, and it's not necessarily on the same day, it's much more flexible. If that takes the pressure off and it gets you going, it's really, really important. I'm a huge believer in doing whatever gets you going with social media. I think it's so easy to be overwhelmed at the beginning, but realistically, it's just doing little bits to get you started on your journey and really enjoying the process. You can also take things a step further as well by looking at a content manager. And both Hootsuite and Buffer are two that I'd really recommend. There are paid options for these, but they both have free versions, which realistically, I think most people wouldn't need any more than that. And with these, it's a platform where you can manage all of your social media in one place. You can see it all on the same grid. You can see a calendar of when your posts are coming out. And also, if you want to share the same post on multiple platforms, you can do it within here by writing one post and highlighting Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It will go to all three. And again, going back to the idea of being realistic and not idealistic, it is better to create native content for each platform that works best for each place. So a tweet that works better on Twitter, a post on Instagram that makes more sense for Instagram's own requirements. Those things will work better. But if you're being realistic and initially you just want to start putting content out and not have to worry about making additional posts for each platform, do use these platforms like Hootsuite and Buffer to share posts all the same place at the click of one button rather than multiple. Okay, so moving on, we're going to look at streaming a little bit. So what exactly is streaming? In essence, it is sending a video through the internet to be consumed by someone who is live when they're watching it. And it's really important that it's that person who's consuming it live, potentially, rather than you sending it live. So hypothetically, what a lot of orchestras do is they will have a pre-recorded video that is all done and edited and beautiful and they've got rid of all the mistakes. And then later on, they send it out as a live stream. And so the person at the other end is consuming it live, or they're watching back what was sent out as a live stream. And also with those things, it's not necessarily just concerts and performances that are live streams as well. Workshops are live streams, talks are live streams. In essence, this workshop is a live stream as well. So your teaching that you do, any workshops that you do, hangouts with your supporters, all these things are live stream, or come under the caveat of streaming itself. So they're certainly something that's of use going forwards. So just to look at going forward, some of the various options for streaming. There are two groups that I would really break things into, which are social media and private streaming, because I couldn't come up with a better term. So social media is the ones we've gone through with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and also Twitch as an additional platform to add from what we were talking about earlier. And private will be something where you put a paywall or an ability to make private the video that you're sending to people. So either that's that you use a specific platform itself to do this, or that you only send the link to people who email you for a private video on YouTube, and those elements. And it's then up to you as to whether you monetize them or not. So for private, there are some various options that are really interesting. So my new favorite thing at the moment by far is a platform called Tides, which I'll get onto in a second. And that is not only in a place where you can live stream your performances and concerts and hangouts, but it does all of the ticketing for this in the same platform as well. So the third one on this is video calls. So say, for example, if you wanted to do a performance and you're using Zoom and wanted to sell tickets, realistically, you'd be using Eventbrite to sell tickets to that and having to integrate it with Zoom, but it's a separate Zoom link and it's two different things. Whereas Tides, you can combine both of these and it's an incredibly powerful platform. Other options are Vimeo, Vimeo itself, where you can have a private video, which you can then use to sell on various platforms. Or there's a service called Vimeo OTT, which stands for over the top, which is quite an unusual term, but an OTT service is something where you have on-demand video. So Netflix is an OTT service, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, anything where you have to pay money in a subscription and then receive access to content. Or it's not necessarily a subscription, it can also be pay-per-view as well. So Vimeo OTT is a platform where there's a free version where you can go ahead and set up your own version of Netflix in effect with your own content that you upload. So first off, we're going to look at social media in a bit more detail, and I'll hopefully give some information that's quite nuts and bolts, but we'll hopefully give you some idea as to where you think you should have your platform. So with Facebook streaming, you can go live both on a computer and on a mobile device. The maximum quality is 720p. You can schedule live streams 7 days in advance, which gives your audience notice if they're happening. They will also receive reminders about this both the day before and as they're happening when you've gone live. You can also make events for live streams, going back to that idea of Facebook having all these additional features that you can use that are really beneficial. There's real-time comments from the audiences that you can react to, which mentioned the notification reminders about before and during live streams. And also at the end of this, the videos remain afterwards. So you have something there for posterity if you want, but you can also remove it. So if you want to have, say, for example, your videos there for eternity that people can see and consume and continue to be engaged with, that's an option. Moving ahead to YouTube. So you can live stream on both a computer and mobile device again. The highest quality you can live stream is 4K, which is a huge step up from what we've just seen before. So you can really have a much higher visual quality of live stream. You can also schedule live streams for any time in the future, which is quite a unique feature that's beyond those 7 days. If you want to plan a whole concert series and have it publicized, that's a really unique feature. Again, you have real-time comments from the audiences. You can have a live video section on your YouTube channel, not only just the ones that have been live, but an upcoming playlist of live videos as well. There's notification reminders for audiences and also email reminders as well. and videos do remain afterwards unless you want to take them away. One interesting caveat is that if you're wanting to go live on a mobile device, and I think most of us will be wanting to, as realistically it's the best camera that we'll have, you need 1,000 subscribers on your channel to be able to enable that feature to go live from a mobile device. The good news is you can get around this, which I'll get onto later on when we talk about broadcasting software. Then Instagram streaming. So this is only available on mobile. The maximum quality is 720p. There's no scheduling, although there are real-time comments for audience members, and notification reminders for audience during live streams is there as well. The video does not remain afterwards, but is there for 24 hours. So that's something that you can't do a performance that'll be there for forever if you wanted to. But what is quite a unique feature is you can invite guests to join your live stream as well. So anyone who is watching, you can invite to be a part of that live stream, and they will join as a second camera, and they will be able to talk to you, discuss, perform, whatever you wish to do as part of that. Okay. Then, just one thing with Instagram as well, it's the only live streaming one where it will be vertical for live streaming. So Twitter, so it's only available on mobile, although you can use additional software to streaming through a computer. The maximum quality again is 720p. There's no scheduling for this, although again, there's real-time comments for audiences and notifications for audiences during live streams, but you just have to enable that feature to get those. The video does remain afterwards, and you can invite guests to join the live stream from their device. As a small caveat, this is sometimes called Periscope, which is the original live streaming platform that Twitter launched and is now sort of been amalgamated into Twitter itself. So some things to consider. We mentioned quite a lot about quality, about most of the platforms being 720p, but YouTube being this very high quality 4K option. It isn't necessarily everything, especially if you're focusing on the live element of this. So even if you're outputting things at 4K, many of your audience members may not be able to receive that on their mobile data at that speed. So they realistically will probably be watching in 720p or 1080 if they've got good internet signal. It's also important to work out where your audience currently is. So although, say, for example, YouTube may be your best option if you really want that high quality, if you have a huge following on Twitter, it may be better just to directly live stream direct to Twitter because you're already putting content native in front of your audience here that you already have. Again, going back to the idea of doing what will get you going, which platform do you enjoy using the most? And then another consideration is mobile or computer. If you're more comfortable using a computer, if you have the additional cameras that you can use to do that, which we'll talk about later, or if you're more comfortable using a mobile device as well. Just as a quick thing as well, there's also another link if you want some more in-depth information on how to physically go live. I didn't think it'd be enough time to cover which buttons do you press on which platform, etc. But if you would like a walkthrough of that, there's a blog on my website, which is then david-tyler.org/mnstreaming. And that'll give some additional information and screenshots and arrows as to which buttons to press to really help you get going at the very beginning. Okay, so streaming private. So how would you do streaming to people when it's private behind a paywall or otherwise? What platforms should you use? Most of the time it's usually sold with tickets, which I think is really encouraged. Again, going back to that, what I mentioned at the beginning, Tide's been my new favorite platform for this. In the same place, you can sell tickets. You can send out reminders to your audience or have automatic reminders to your audience. You can have interactive rooms like Zoom, and you can stream all in one place, whether that is through pre-recorded video or doing live video as well. And what's really fascinating is you can combine all of those into an event that you can sell. So you can have a live performance hangout room followed by a live performance of a pre-recorded video, and then a hangout room post-concert drink session. And that can all be within one ticket, and you can set that up. If you're wanting to do the streaming elements that aren't pre-recorded, you actually want to go live directly through a camera, you will also need to use broadcasting software, which sounds very scary, but we'll touch on later. It's quite a simple process, but it's something that is worth being aware of. There's an additional step there as well. You can also then use Eventbrite as well. If you wanted to sell tickets to events, they have a virtual events option within Eventbrite. You will need something like Zoom, and Zoom does have integration, but you can also offer any other video service or option within there, such as Skype, Vimeo, YouTube private links, or that's a little bit more tricky as people can easily share those. So there's additional features from within there. The downside of this is that you will be having to use multiple platforms to get yourself going, although one of the benefits is that Eventbrite is obviously internationally known and something that we're all quite aware of. And again, mentioned Vimeo OTT earlier as an on-demand service. The free option does let you put content up, and they take a small commission from this, and it then creates a body of work that people can access either as a pay-per-view or as a monthly subscription service. You can also do live streaming through Vimeo OTT, but it is exceptionally expensive feature on their website. The way around this that I would recommend is that you can have broadcasting times for your content. So instead of direct live streaming at 7:30, you can have a piece of content that goes out at 7:30 that you schedule to be posted then and released, which is a way of getting around spending, I think, something like €4,000, which I definitely recommend doing. So again, just to have a look at Tides, these are some of the various options that are available to them. So I mentioned before about creating a whole channel and platform there, some of the HD streaming that's available, and the ability to sell tickets to access all things on demand as well. Okay, so now moving into the advanced live stream section. So earlier I mentioned broadcasting software, which again sounds something that's incredibly scary and that you need to be a producer at RTE to understand, but realistically it's something that now as consumers we can all use. And one of the good things that we have in our sector is that being slightly behind others, that when it comes to things like broadcasting, the computer gaming world has taken this well beyond where we are already. And any questions you have, someone has already made a tutorial for on YouTube. So why would you use a broadcasting software? For a start, it helps you enable scheduled live streams. So if you want to do a scheduling live stream on Facebook, it works so much better if you're using a broadcasting software. It allows you to connect additional cameras. So if you want to, say, for example, switch between different people mid-live stream of, say, the violinist over here and a cellist over here, you can do that as you're going. You can edit on the fly. You can increase the production quality. So you can not only have these additional cameras, you can have graphic overlays and various things. And you can connect additional streaming services, which I'll mention in a second. To do a very ridiculous example of increasing the production quality, here, this entire presentation is being run on a streaming platform, broadcasting software. And so, for example, this could be what your live stream could look like, with a big, slightly over-the-top banner flying at the bottom to say where people can send in money. You can have a sponsor, your own logo. The bit on the side of this is actually a YouTube integration where your comments will fly up on screen and you can bring comments from people into it. I know this is a bit cheesy and over the top, but it shows that you can have these additional things as part of it. So the ability to connect to additional streaming services is really important. So whether that is YouTube or Facebook, or I mentioned Tides earlier, that ability is really important for not just using your webcam, but for stepping up by using additional cameras, or just being able to connect to these platforms directly and having all these graphic overlays if you wanted them. With these software, you can flick between live as it is now, or to show a pre-recorded video as well. So you can almost curate your own television program. And again, it sounds slightly scary, but in essence, it's just a glorified PowerPoint presentation, which does make it much more easy to use. The two that I would recommend are Open Broadcast Software and Streamlabs OBS. Both of these platforms are entirely free. So again, it's great that we can now use all this stuff as consumers without spending a penny. OBS is slightly more flexible. You can do some more complex things with it. But Streamlabs OBS is a fraction simpler to use at the very beginning, and it's a bit easier to connect to your social media. We mentioned earlier that YouTube doesn't let you live stream directly from a mobile phone unless you have 1,000 subscribers. The good news is that Streamlabs has its own mobile app where you can directly live stream to YouTube with less than 1,000 views. You can do it with 0 subscribers if you wish. And it's an incredibly simple app, very, very easy to connect to your social media platforms, and incredibly powerful. And realistically, most of us won't have cameras that we can connect to a computer. So most of us will be using our phones in our pockets. And this is a fantastic way of getting around live streaming to these platforms in a way that is more direct and facilitates you for using things like Tides or Vimeo or YouTube, etc. So just to show you what this glorified PowerPoint will look like. This is a screenshot of Streamlabs. And as you can see, there is the graphic in the middle where there's the person speaking. That is what is then output. So this is almost like the presentation screen. And then there's various scenes, there's an audio mixer and various bits. And what they have is a very simple setup. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with having just one camera pointing to someone and no additional things and no additional scenes or various elements, and it being quite a simple output. And the benefit of this is that you then can either send it out to different places. You can send it to a restreaming service, which is a question we'll get onto in a second, or connect it to things like ties. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you want, you then have the potential for adding different camera angles, different scenes, setups, graphics, etc. But it's a really simple way to get started at the very beginning. So I mentioned restreaming. So this is the ability to go live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time, or any other platforms. So natively, from what you are streaming from and outputting from your computer, you can only send one output at a time to the internet to go onto any one platform, which is a huge shame. The good news is that there are services that can help you what is called restream and share your live stream to multiple places. So if you want, you can live stream directly to Facebook, to YouTube, to Twitter, to Instagram, to Twitch, to anywhere you can think of, all at the same time. And the benefits of doing this is that this video content will show up natively within each place. So say, for example, instead of sharing your YouTube live stream on Twitter, you could have a YouTube live stream and a Twitter live stream. And the fact it's native will have benefits to your audience that are on Twitter. The two platforms that I would really recommend are Caster.io and Restream.io. Both are paid platforms. Caster is slightly cheaper. I personally use Restream. There's some functionality that I really like in there. For example, you can, instead of having to monitor all your different social media platforms comment section on different tabs in your computer and going cross-eyed, they have a place where all your comments can come into one platform on one browser, and you can either reply directly to Facebook or to YouTube, or you can send a comment out to absolutely every platform. So I really like that. In addition, with the software that I use, Restream also allows you to bring comments into your live streaming software a bit easier as well, if you wish to show those on the screen, etc. For this, you will need broadcasting software, as you need to send an output directly from your computer to these places. So again, that goes back to the idea of OBS or Streamlabs. One thing that may be of interest is that Restream can also be used as a broadcasting software. So it now has an in-browser option where you can create your own output, which may be an easy, simpler option for you as well, rather than having to have these multiple steps. So just as an example to show you, this is kind of what the flow of a restreaming service would look like. And this diagram is from Restream. But in the center, you have the white camera, where it is you capturing the content on your computer from a broadcasting thing. And you send it out to Restream directly as one source, and they then do the hard work of sharing it out elsewhere. And with Restream as well, it's just as simple as logging in on your social accounts within Restream itself. Okay, so some tips on how to make your stream great. That's the sort of the nuts and bolts we've covered of how to set them up. What makes a stream great rather than a stream average or a stream boring? Some really good tips for maximizing your streams are to include your audience. So talk to them directly as part of the stream. Many within the music world, especially in organizations, are quite guilty of almost presenting it as if it's TV content with no direct correspondence to the audience. And for me, that's a huge failure, because social media is the most important part, is being social. And even within TV, there's always people requesting people to get in touch with their comments and thoughts on various bits. So I'd very much talk to them directly, treat it more sociably, ask them to engage and talk back within the comment section. You can also have calls to action, where that is things to get involved in the process, such as choosing repertoire and perform pieces for the next performance. It could also be to go away and sign up to a mailing list for more information. It could be to purchase your CDs. There's so much you can do to really engage and get them to do something as part of this. You could also do a thing where the next time they have to invite a friend along as well. So you're getting them to be a part of growing your audience and empowering them to be a part of the community. It's really important as well to reply to the audience, especially if it's you're not able to talk to them directly within the stream itself for whatever reason. Say, for example, if you're multitasking and actually doing some music performing at the same time. So even afterwards, it's really important to acknowledge and reply to people who've commented, especially if it's a social media one. And also, there's lots of ways you can smarten up your live stream. So say, for example, you can have props, you can make a set, you can try and make sure it's a beautiful layout around you that looks scenic and that your washing isn't in the corner, or you have a bit of a gap behind you for depth of field, or you're lit very nicely as well. So some elements you can do to make yourself look a little bit more presentable. Very much treat your live stream as a stage and curate it off the back of that. So the tricky question is then, how do you make money with your live stream? So we mentioned the ticketing option earlier with Tides and Vimeo OTT and Eventbrite and those options. That is a very obvious way of how you can make money with your live stream, and having this barrier initially, but also the processes where you can do it. If, say, for example, you're wanting to do free live streams the way you ask people for donations, either on social media or through, say, for example, a private Zoom link that they then is free to access, but then you ask for donations. Two great platforms for accepting donations are PayPal.me, and although it says Ko-Fi, the pronunciation is coffee, so it came from the idea that people would donate the price of a coffee to you. And they're really good options for people just having a very simple and trusted link where they can submit whatever money they would like to you. The other option as well is having a subscriber platform where people pay either a subscription a month just to support you, or to receive additional bonus content as well. This is similar to the YouTube membership thing we spoke about earlier, where you need 30,000 viewers, but the platforms Patreon and Ko-Fi also have these features where you can go onto their services and sign up and create a profile, and your audience members can subscribe for different tiered access. And you can have, say, a bronze, silver, gold membership scheme where people have different access to different rewards, and those rewards can be both online through Patreon or Ko-Fi, or they can be in person. So it could be that if you are gold, they receive a hand-signed CD in the post to you as well. And there's so much potential there for being able to do it. And these are things you can start to scale up. As £5 a month may not seem much, but that's then £60 a year. And if you get 10 people, that's £600. So all of a sudden, things can snowball to being quite a huge amount of money. And then there's also indirect ways of making money with your live stream, which is quite a unique and harder way of doing it, but also has some really big potential rewards. So indirect would be leveraging your attention. Realistically, it's treating yourself as an entity which you can advertise or create partnerships for or endorse people with. So the most obvious one will be adverts within a concert, something that is overt that you're endorsing within the stream. So you could potentially partner with a local business. And the way to sort of reverse engineer that is think, what business would like to access my audience? What products or services would my audience want? There was a Baroque ensemble in the UK called Baroque Boricum, who in one of their live streams in September, I think it was, also did a live gin tasting halfway through that they got paid money to do because this gin distillery wanted to connect them. And they are, with respect to them, quite a small, moderate-sized ensemble, and they're not someone who is internationally famous, and yet they will still be able to attract these sorts of brand partnerships and affiliations. You can also sell recordings and so use these opportunities to promote people to go away and buy your music, either on streaming services or through CDs. You can also sell digital downloads yourself with Bandcamp, which I'll mention shortly in a second. Amazon affiliate links, which I'm going to go on a tangent on in a second. And this is basically where you can list products that are on Amazon, where if someone clicks on your link, you receive commission if they purchase it or if they go on to purchase something else. So say, for example, you can list that you are using a certain mouthpiece, specific drumsticks, this type of guitar, this type of microphone, and you can talk about them as part of that process, potentially, or just have them there as a passive way for people to find out what you're using. And off the back of that, you can receive little bits of money. So the tangent about Amazon affiliate links is that if you are teaching, I cannot recommend using Amazon affiliate links highly enough. So if you have 30 to 40 students, realistically, you're going to be recommending them to go out and buy books, strings, mouthpieces, equipment constantly. So if you're doing that anyway, and realistically, they're going to be ordering it through the internet, it makes sense for you to be able to get some commission from this. So if you have an affiliate account and you tell all your students to buy certain books, that's 30 books that you're getting some form of commission off for doing absolutely no work extra on what you would normally have done. So I really recommend having a look at that. You can also use your live streams to offer other elements and products and services that you do as well. So books, arrangements, lessons, workshops, PDFs, anything that's there that you can offer as an additional service that you think you have value from your knowledge base, you can offer and use this as a place. So you can really think outside the box as well and work out what other things you can do. There's someone I saw in, I think it was around May, June time, who was offering musical postcards, and they used that. I think they managed to get 70% of their income was from offering musical postcards to people, where they would do a performance, and then as part of it, they would recommend this service, and off the back of it, then they were able to monetize, which is quite a unique view. So we also mentioned about platforms for your creations at the very beginning of this. So what is it that you have that you can create? Where can you put it online, and where can you sell it as well? So I mentioned Bandcamp as a place for digital downloads. And as you may or may not be aware, that the conversation around streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music for the money that they provide artists is growing more and more, because realistically it gives artists so little money. So one way around this initially is that you won't necessarily be able to get the amount of views on Spotify that would give you a decent income. So you can potentially find a different way, which is offering digital downloads. The website Bandcamp is a really good place for doing this, and it offers a secure download and protects your content. But the person, instead of streaming your music, will receive an MP3. Or they can also choose higher file sizes if they prefer as well. And with Bandcamp, you receive 85% of the fee that you set. So if you decide to charge €10 for your album, you receive €8.50. They're also doing every now and then on a Friday, I think it's the first Friday of every month, zero commission day. So you receive 100% of the fee as well. And within there, you can create albums, individual MP3s, upload artwork, various elements. And it's a really good, secure platform. And although it seems strange to offer a digital download, if you realistically sell one album or one MP3 at €10, that means you get €8.50, and there's a lot more than you make on Spotify during the year. Another option if you're offering digital downloads of things like arrangements of your music, teaching books, any sort of resource that's a PDF or electronic, you can sell those as well on the internet as a digital download. The options for doing this are either directly through your website. Both Spotify and Wix have e-commerce options where you can have digital products. If you're not wanting to use your website itself, there's also a service called Selfie, which is also highly recommended, and that is also very good at protecting your content as well, as a potential option for that. And then also, if you're wanting to talk more, we mentioned way back at the beginning of this, of doing what you love and what you enjoy. If you're really passionate about talking about music and you're great at the spoken word but don't necessarily want to be on camera, podcasts are a great way of doing this, or for showcasing your music as well, having a live music show as a podcast. The only one that I would ever recommend is a service called Anchor.fm. It's kind of similar to a social media platform app on your phone, where you can either create snapshots by holding record and do it directly from your phone, or you can upload the completed MP3 as well. And what the huge benefit of Anchor is, it's incredibly easy to use, but also takes care of the redistribution to other listening services. So when you publish on Anchor, it will also send it out to Spotify, to Apple Podcasts, to any way you can think of having a podcast. And it takes care of everything from there. There are other options available, but honestly, it's the only one I'd ever recommend because it is incredible and it's entirely free. And it also offers the option of monetizing and putting adverts within your stream as well. And you are in control of those adverts, and you record them in your own voice. So it's a more personal way than just putting random generic stuff in the middle of your adverts as well. So you still get that personal touch, and you can monetize it off the back of there. Brilliant. So I'm really curious to get into Q&A based on anything I've said so far. Any thoughts you have before or after this session, or anything that's sort of taking your fancy to go along as a train of thoughts. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts and things. And I think some questions coming in already, if that's right.
Thanks very much, David. That was a great presentation. I certainly learned a lot there and had some things cleared up as well. So if we start off with a question that we had in advance, this was from Julie and Mark, and I think probably David addressed most of the questions that you sent, except perhaps this one, David. How can we attract more people to our stream?
Yes, it's certainly a difficult question, especially when attention spans are short and in demand at the moment, and obviously there's more musicians live streaming, so it's a more competitive place. I'd really focus on building a small community first and making sure they're really strong ambassadors. And then from there, you can start to generate more and more. So I mentioned this, one of the calls to action was inviting a friend, which was really good. Partnering with other people for collaborations is a great one. So say, for example, if it's you and another artist both combining your audience to to have yourselves performing in one performance. You share that audience between yourselves. You could also share the audience of a local business as well. Either similarly, if it's something like the gin tasting, where that's something a bit out there and a bit different, or it could be a live music venue, a charity, a hospice, a shop, anything where you can think. There's one I saw recently where they partnered with a hairdressing salon, which is something quite surreal, but they were doing it as a way of the hairdressing salon getting some attention. But again, it's sharing those audiences. And then you can start to build up getting coverage by trying to also then re-engineer what you think will bring people value. What is topical to them, what they find interesting, what's great about you, what's your story. And for me, the massive advantage we have as individuals over organizations is we have that strong story. That's something that's really powerful and that people want to buy and support. So I personally would much rather be interested in your story as an individual and want to give you money than RTE or the London Symphony Orchestra or one of these people. So I think doubling down on the fact that you're an individual, building a strong community that has loyalty, and then starting to either ask them to share your story for you or to collaborate with other people.
Thanks, David. Hopefully that answers those questions, but do let us know if you'd like a bit more detail on any of the other questions that were submitted in advance there. So next question, David, about links to events, for example, Facebook giving notice about events. I sometimes miss the events that other artists post. What are the best reminding options?
Yes, so if you wanted to really make sure that people are reminded, having a service where you can either email people out if it's ticketed is really good. You can also encourage people to sign up to a mailing list. So just to segment those two thoughts in my head, if it's that you're selling tickets, Eventbrite can do automatic reminders to people. You can also send out reminders specifically as you want and create those as you want as well and send them nudges in advance. But if it's things like you're live streaming on Facebook and people are potentially missing it, etc., you can also encourage people to sign up to a mailing list. And then they can see email notifications or reminders as you're going along, and they can be created for them. Mailchimp is an incredibly good resource for this, and it's quite simple to use. It's also free up until a certain point, but it's I think it's around the 4,000 email contacts or something crazy. So realistically for you, that's gonna be a really good option for doing that. And again, making sure that things are on all your social media platforms are updated to give people nudges where they are. So say, for example, if you are live streaming on Facebook, you can do some reminders on Twitter in advance to go and check out your Facebook. I know I said before it's better to be native if possible, but if you're focusing on one platform, that could be a really good way of doing it. And I think just making sure that you keep it fresh in people's minds in a way that isn't repetitive. So say, for example, having a week reminder post that is just a generic, you can watch it here, followed by a short video message you saying really looking forward to it, maybe then followed by a teaser trailer, and you can try and find ways of making unique, interesting content that keeps reminding people it's coming up soon.
Great, thanks, David. Next question, how do you upload videos to Twitter? Can that be done?
Yes, Twitter can be done. So it is, if you're just wanting to do a general one, it's as simple as drag and drop. I potentially could even screen share and show you if that's a help. But normally when you're composing a tweet, there's the tweet option, or from there you can then press the gallery button and then from there drop it in. And there's also the Twitter Studio as well, which is hidden away in the features. So if you were to click on the more button on Twitter and then above settings, there's Media Studio. You can also upload media there and share it with other people as well. If you're wanting to go live on Twitter, if you're doing it directly, it's through your phone and it's in the same element of where you press compose tweet. There's then a small option that says go live. If you're wanting to go live from a desktop, it's slightly more complicated. You need to look at the Periscope Studio if you're doing it directly, or if you're using a restreaming service, something like Restream or Caster, they will automatically push it out onto desktop in the desktop format as well.
Thanks for that, David. Next question, do you have any recommendations or rules about regularity of posting live streams? How much is too much?
Very good question. For me, I'd almost go the opposite way of again, looking about what makes things work for you. So what for you is attainable and achievable. And realistically, the more you do, the more it is, but the more benefits there are. But it may mean that you're running short on ideas of pieces to play, music to perform, and there is certainly a danger of bombarding your community. So I only think weekly is very good, or maybe switching up to be twice a week with a different live stream in the middle. So say, for example, a shorter form, more casual hangout live stream in the middle, or educational live stream, then with a more music performance focused one at a different time. I'd also be really careful to think about who your audience are and what they may be interested in doing with their time where you're wanting to broadcast as well. So actually I was talking to Sarah before this session started about one orchestra client I was speaking to, who for one of their performances had a massive drop off in their season finale of live streaming. They couldn't work out why. And it was on the same day that Hamilton launched on Disney+. So everyone decided to watch that on the Friday night rather than the orchestra. So potentially look at what else you clash with, what's on TV, what sporting events there are, and try and find somewhere that you think is going to be good as a regular post. I'd also definitely try and work on regularity as well. So if it's every Tuesday, make sure it stays the same day and make it sort of a feature and cornerstone in their diary.
Great, thanks, David. I'm jumping to this question at the bottom here. Do you think it's better to have all your music available on free listening platform like YouTube and Spotify to increase your audience, or focus more on having all your music on Bandcamp, focusing more on monetizing it? Good question.
Yes, I think it very much depends on what your goal is at that time. So if it is that you are desperately trying to monetize things as soon as possible, then I'd certainly make sure things are on Bandcamp and that's initially there. If it's you're wanting to grow and money's no object, I'd then push everything onto YouTube. And that's quite a sort of a hands-off answer. I think there's certainly a balance to be struck. What it could be that is that you offer behind the scenes footage or glimpses on YouTube. So you're using it as giving people content that isn't your music per se, that they're watching something else, they're getting to know you as a person, there's that personal connection there. And that in essence, at the end of it, you will guilt trip them into go away and buying your music on Bandcamp. And that's in essence what we're really wanting, is that sort of the guilty element. And that you have this relationship with them. So I potentially look at ways of what you can do to showcase your music on YouTube that isn't directly giving it, but is say behind the scenes or live, or you talking about your music or the process of doing it, or practice tips, and then a little glimpse of the music, and then potentially show it on Bandcamp as a digital download.
Thanks, David. And the last question we have here, unless anyone would like to get in there with some more, could you talk about the trends of 2020, about new software that emerged, or the live streaming techniques that are emerging or most popular?
Yes, very good question. So things like open broadcast software and Streamlabs as software have been around for a while. The gaming community is very far ahead of us when it comes to live streaming things. So they've been around for a while. So there's not actually many developments within the streaming broadcasting software. But I think in terms of live streaming itself, that's where things are becoming interesting. So Tides, I think, has only been launched for 2 months, and that's a very new platform, and it's aimed at trying to support smaller creators rather than the big ones. So a lot of orchestras use Vimeo OTT as their solution, whereas Tides is very much going for individual creators. As a general trend, we saw at the start of April, beginning of March, and throughout April itself, a huge spike in engagement on social media for orchestras and arts and musicians. And that was generally, I think, due to this sense of goodwill, that people wanted to help support and share, because we thought it was a finite pandemic that was going to be short and we could help musicians during the short term. What we then saw was a drop off in engagement as it became saturated and people became slightly fatigued with digital content. So in essence, only content that is good would then start surviving. I'm going to quantify good later on. So in essence, what we then found is this started to be a drop off, and that repetitive content wasn't necessarily working if it was just putting out the same thing over and over again. We also found that people are more likely to give money to individuals than they are to organizations, which I think for us is a really positive benefit, that people are wanting to support individual creators and makers. We're also finding that there is now micro niches, that we are having smaller audiences who are retained. And we're also finding that there's scope for these collaborations and other ways of providing what we do online. So for example, Zoom has now managed to improve significantly in its stability and ways to do music. Then there's other platforms like Google Meet then became a thing coming out of it as well. But for me, just to go back to the idea of what is good content isn't necessarily what is the most highly pretty cameraed, that's not a sentence, I'm very aware. But what is the most cinematic, beautiful, high expensive film content? It is what is the most personal and works well on social media. So you will notice that a lot of orchestras use, orchestras in my field, hence why I keep referring to them, but use these robotic cameras that are very high in cinematic, but a lot of what they put out is repetitive and boring. And in essence, if they're not doing something that is interesting, of use, and is social, and has an element of connecting with people, it's not going to work. So realistically, you can make better content with your phone in your pocket, even though it's not cinematic, even though it's a bit rough around the edges, but because it's personal and social, you have much more opportunity to make big gains. A really good example of this is Igor Levitt, who did live streaming on Twitter very early on during the pandemic. You would know that his is going to win an Oscar for cinematography, but it's something that's very personal. He spoke to his audience all the time. He engaged in the process of choosing pieces throughout the week before. That level of interaction is really important as well. And again, in general, microtransactions also are a growing thing, that people are more likely to give a smaller amount more regularly. So the price of a coffee, anything that's subscription model based. It's the same reason I have an Amazon Audible account that I keep forgetting to cancel, is that sort of, it goes off in your bank account regularly. So I think there's certainly options there. I think going forward is going to be, again, doubling down on that. When people go back to live, they're going to go back to the people that stay connected with the most. So if you're managing to maintain your connection with your audience, they're going to be the ones who flock to you first off the back of this, and not to somewhere else. So that's quite a long answer.
That was a great answer, David. So there's just one more question in there, which is harking back to the Twitter issue. The same questioner is wondering maybe there's an issue with format when it comes to uploading Twitter videos that might prevent you.
There shouldn't necessarily be. I've had it a few times on mobile where uploads fail, but it's just more of a Twitter being a strange thing. If it's a views call, I'm more than happy to do a short video call at some point. We can go through and screen share and see something that's sort of specific that's being an issue, if that's of helpful use.
That's great, Cormac. Sorry, David. So, Cormac, if you want to set up that with David, just send me an email afterwards, and I can put you in touch. Thanks very much. Okay, so there don't seem to be any more questions, David. Oh, there is one. Sorry.
No problem at all.
Long text captions work well. Any more thoughts on that?
Yes, particularly with Instagram. So there's almost a micro-blogging niche on Instagram where if you have a photo within the caption section, you can write long prose. So I think there's certainly lots of potential there for doing it. Again, it's going back to what you think works for you and gets you going and is achievable. So if you find that's something that's really going to energize you writing those captions, then definitely do it. And if you can provide value within it rather than I've been very guilty of this in the past, but it's very tempting as a musician to humble brag and say things that are going on and talk about yourself all the time. But if it's more audience focused, it will have significant benefits. So tips, education, sharing of thoughts, discussion, anything that is in essence replicating what real life is and being social. If you went to a dinner party and there was someone there who spent the entire time talking about themselves, you think it'd be quite a bore. But if it's that element of dialogue and conversation, they're the things that works really well. So in essence, for anything that succeeds online, it's just picking up what works in real life and dropping it into this platform. But yes, just to go back to the original point, the long form content on Instagram does work really well. And there's now this information with the algorithm that if you use all the multiple features in Instagram, it will work better. But again, on Facebook, that's also one for longer form posts as well that can work well. Or if you want, you can use that as an opportunity to signpost to your website as well.
Lovely, thanks, David. So I think
Pleasure.
That brings our Q&A to a close. So it remains for me to thank David for a really informative presentation and to thank all of you for your attention and your great questions. I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow we have a great session called Extending Your Practice Online at 11 a.m. Where we have 3 panelists, Liz Doherty, Xenia Pestover-Bennett and Gwendolyn Mason, all of whom have offered something unique online this year. And that presentation tomorrow is going to take the form of a Zoom meeting rather than a webinar, because it's envisaged that the Q&A will be an interactive discussion. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you there tomorrow. So thanks again to David, and thanks again to all.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.